Hey guys, how you doing? Doc Vinyl here again. What are we doing today? Well, today, as you can hear in the background, some of the most intense music of your life. Today we're going to do prog rock. And I'm going to do a top 10 of prog rock, and this is some pretty cool stuff here. I'm going to talk about what prog rock is, and its evolution, the top 10 songs of it. That's prog rock. Okay. What is prog rock? I'll turn this down. As I turn this down, what is prog rock? Well, progressive rock was kind of a key term in the mid to late 60s when people in rock were starting to integrate classical music and non-traditional instruments into rock and roll. I mean, the traditional rock and roll instruments, as we all know, guitar, bass, drums, vocals. And more use of keyboards, which keyboards were used in rock and roll from the very beginning, you know, Jerry Lee Lewis and everyone else, but keyboards were always kind of a background instrument, but using the keyboards as an instrument, or string instruments, or the hard integration of time changes and melodic sounds that are different, and of course the usage of synthesizers, the mellotron, all these different technologies that were coming to age in the 60s to be used in rock and roll to get kind of a feel to it. In some ways, if you want to talk about it intellectually, what progressive rock is to rock is kind of like what abstract expressionism is to painting. It's kind of an emotional outburst of using the art form, in this case, rock and roll music, and using it in an emotional art form. Different in punk, where punk is more of a kind of a straight up kind of thing. That's more like of the drip paintings of Jackson Pollock, but progressive rock would be more like kind of like Picasso's Cubism. Well, let's get into enough of that. What was prog rock and what had happened? Well, it evolved in about 65, 66. It started to hit the scenes. Bands like the Beatles, some of the mainstream bands were starting to use instruments that were non-traditional, starting to use time signature changes and things like that are definitely not your four on the floor rock and roll, and started to expand the boundaries of rock to really get it kind of cool. Now, progressive rock's one of my things. I really, really enjoy it. A lot of people don't. Not everyone loves a 12-minute long song or a 25-minute long song, or sometimes the whole album is one song. But prog rock has also spawned the concept albums and things like that. I mean, you could talk about a lot of things that are prog and psychedelic kind of rock, things like Tommy and others, which I didn't include. I kind of kept it as a strict 10 top bands of prog. These are more general towards popular bands, not kind of like, hey, get into all obscure. I have a lot of obscure stuff over there, Gentle Giant, all this other stuff, but I don't want to get Atomic Rooster. This was kind of more of bands that you might have heard of, and even bands that you might have not thought that were prog, but were in their early careers, and how they changed over. A couple of these bands in this, one of them's very popular, and a couple of them are kind of popular, but then they changed in their careers. But I'm going to talk about each album, and it's a top 10 countdown. I'm going to go from 10 to 1 to my number 1 album. And these are my opinions, of course. So in the comment section, please, if you disagree, awesome. Write it down. Tell me what you think. It's like, hey, I don't think that's number 1. Give me your list. Put your list out there. Let me know what you think. It's really important in the comment sections. And, we're going to post this up on Record Hub and Max J Records and everything. So just, guys, let's talk about this. It's a good way to get a discourse on prog rock. But some of these bands are well-known prog rock bands, but some of them are not as well-known. But they're not anything obscure. There was a lot of progressive rock, and it's still around with us today. I mean, it's still bands that still kind of practice that kind of intricate level of musicianship. Now, the problem with prog rock is it's not very lyrical, as most people like lyrical rock and roll music that's kind of like, hey, da-da-da-da. The songs got kind of a catchy tunes. There's not a lot of hooks in prog rock. Some of them can be a little bit catchy, but generally speaking, most progressive rock is going to be instrumentally driven, a little bit more angular, a little bit more different time changes. It could be very atonal. It could be, some people like, oh, what's that? And it can be very grating to some people. But again, it's all about taste, and prog is here to stay. I like it. And again, I'm going to do this kind of a primer on it, because some of the bands, like one of the bands that I did last week, Traffic, was obviously a prog band. I talked a little bit about that. But this I'm going to talk exactly just about prog rock. Get the primer in there, so then when I start doing other band focuses over the next couple of weeks, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and others, but of course, we'll talk about that and you'll see after watching this video to kind of know what prog is about. Also, it's like a primer. This is kind of to get you involved and say, hey, I want to try out some prog rock. These are some bands to go with. Okay, without further ado, let's start off with some of the guitar prog rock. One of the, out of the top 10, this is the 10th, is Journey's debut album. Great album, 1975. This is pre-Steve Perry days. This is Neil Schon, Greg Rowley, Ainsley Dunbar. A whole different lineup on this one right here playing on the band. This is a very proggy songs, very kind of instrumental, guitar-driven, some good keyboard work, some great drums. Not a lot of singing on this album because they didn't have a front man. They didn't have a Steve Perry singer guy yet. Greg Rowley did some of the singing, and they kind of went back and forth and did it, but this was more, and there are a couple of instrumentals on this song, on this album too, so it's actually very good. This is one of the forgotten albums of Journey, because everyone, when they go to Journey, they go right to the Steve Perry era, they go right to Departure, or Infinity, or one of those albums that they love, but this is definitely a different band. Not as popular, of course, but pretty good stuff. Pretty good stuff nonetheless. So, again, Journey's first album, I suggest you check it out. If you like guitar-driven rock, it's kind of like a little proto, kind of like got a little bit of the Boston thing going on, but less vocals, because of course there's a Brad Delp type person in it. But lots of guitar. Neil Schon's work is excellent. Ainsley Dunbar's drums are really, really good. Greg Rowley's keyboards are intricate. Good stuff. Interesting aspect of Journey. Something if you've never heard before, you'd be like, wow, that's Journey? Yeah, very interesting. So, Journey's number 10. Okay, now moving on the line, we have another band, another American band from the early 70s, Styx. And Styx started out as a proggy band, and they got a little popular, but their second album, Styx 2, very cool. This has even got a fugue in it, and got a classical piece drawn that Dennis DeYoung does. Just really, really cool stuff. As you can see, the very prog kind of cover on it. Very good album. This does have one hit of the hit songs, as that song "Lady," which was of course the big Dennis DeYoung hit. But otherwise, this album is very oriented towards proggy. A couple of the songs, You Better Ask, Little Fugue in G, Father of OSA, Earl of Roseland, I'm Gonna Make You Feel It. This is very proggy, as was the first album, too. I was going to pick either one the first album, but I kind of like this one because this one isn't as popular. The first album is popular just because it's his premiere album. This album, I believe, came out in 1974. Yep, it is. Let me see, 74. Yeah, 74. But good stuff. Pretty good stuff on this. Again, has Lady on it. If you want to hear some early Styx, Korolowski, this is pre-Tommy Shaw days too. Good guitar work. Great Dennis DeYoung keyboards. Lots of piano work. Good stuff. Okay, moving on to number 8. Number 7, the Beatles. Yeah, the Beatles are proggy. Not super proggy, but this album in particular, a lot of people cite Sgt. Pepper's, but I'm going to not go that route. I'm going to go this album because it's got a little bit more psychedelic going on. Of course, I'm talking about Magical Mystery Tour. Great album. Of course, it's the Beatles. I'm a Walrus. Definitely got some proggy thing going on in here. This album right here really does do some things. The Fool on the Hill, Magical Mystery Tour itself, Strawberry Fields Forever. Of course, a lot of these songs are very popular, but they do have a proggy element to them. Lots of use of keyboards, lots of use of non-traditional rock and roll instruments. Really good stuff. And again, very much a concept album too, as was Sgt. Pepper's. But again, Sgt. Pepper could be considered one of the first. This is the same year, 1967. They both came out the same year. This came out later. I kind of think this one's a little bit more proggy. And this definitely influenced a couple other albums that we're going to talk about. But yeah, Magical Mystery Tour. Very good album. Comes in at number 7. Okay. Number 6. Genesis. Now, Genesis turned into a pop band, but their early days with Peter Gabriel selling England by the Pound, this is one of their really, really good albums. I think this is one of their best albums. I mean, I like Trespass and Foxtrot. Those are really good, too. Early, this is with Phil Collins on drums, not singing too much. This is mostly Peter Gabriel, but this has got some classics on it. It's got Fifth to Firth, which is amazing. This has got The Battle of the Epping Forest. Really, really good stuff. Isle of Pain, The Cinema Show. They played a lot of these live later on, and Lil Mize down on Broadway. Just really cool stuff. Lots of instrumentation. Use of string instruments, keyboards, mellotron, all kinds of stuff. Just everything thrown in on this one. Very good album. Very good stuff. This is really Genesis at its heyday of the prog era. Very proggy album. Very intricate stuff going on. Peter Gabriel's stage shows were really cool too. He wore some costumes and was very, very elaborate. But again, this is really the that element of progressive rock. It really was in the heyday. This album came out in 1973, so this was right in the peak, I would consider, of prog rock era. And Genesis, really good stuff. Can't really put this down. And this is one of the albums a lot of people don't cite. A lot of them will go to Foxtrot or Nursery Crime as the ultimate Peter Gabriel era album, but I like Selling You by the Pound a little bit better. It's a little bit more developed, but that's just me. I mean, again, it's my opinion. Guys, let me know. That's what the comment section is for. So yes, good stuff on this. You want to hear some jamming and some good theatrics. Way to go. Okay, coming in at number 5 is a well-known album and probably one of the earliest of the prog rock albums. And of course, I'm talking about Days of Future Past by Moody Blues. This album obviously features massive use of orchestra. First of all, they're on the London Festival Orchestra is by Peter Knight is with the band as they recorded this album. This has Tuesday afternoon, doo-doo. Oh, great stuff with the keyboards and the instrumentation of the orchestra in the background. And of course, it's got Nights in White Saturn. Again, the whole album, the morning, the lunch break, and each song in this particular album is very interesting because there's no breaks. The songs go into each other. There's no breaks in between, and that's very much of a progressive element to show that they're kind of like all connected. Very much like a symphonic piece with different elements to it. The music is very well played, and the musicianship of this band is amazing. This is their second album, but again, this came out the same year that Sgt. Pepper's and Magical Mystery Tour came out, so you could consider it one of the first of the prog rock albums. Of course, Pink Floyd's album, 1967, came out too, which would be Pipers at the Gates of Dawn, but again, we're not going to go who was the first prog band. There was kind of a movement happening, coinciding with all the bands. But this is really a very important album, and I really highly recommend it. Very melodic. A lot of people, this is more of a prog that people could deal with because it's very melodic, kind of like the Beatles album. It's a little bit more pop-oriented, but very good stuff, though, nevertheless. Very good playing. So that's my number 5. Okay. 3, 4, 5. Coming in at, that was number 6. Coming in at number 5 is the band I did last week, and of course I'm talking about Traffic, and I would consider, and their best album for number 5 would be, of course, John Barleycorn Must Die. This album is really interesting because there's a lot of instrumentation on it, a lot of cool stuff on this one. This one has a lot of really cool elements. Again, I love the sleeve, with Steve Winwood, Jim Capaldi, and Chris Wood. This one really is good because this has Glad and Freedom Rider, which are instrumental pieces that go in. Lots of keyboard playing by Steve Winwood. There is some singing on this album, of course, but lots of keyboard, a lot of intricate work here. And then Empty Pages with Winwood and Capaldi going back and forth. Great stuff. Side 2 has Stranger to Himself, which is really good. John Barleycorn and Every Mother's Son. These are really good proggy band. This has a very good feel to it. Lots of instrumentation, lots of catches in the Glad and Freedom Rider. The songs are very, very catchy. You heard them last week when I was playing them. This is good stuff. And if you've never heard Traffic before, I would really recommend this album. This is a really good album to get into. Some of the other albums, which I like even better, like Low Spark of High Heel Boys, I stayed away from a little bit because it's more psychedelic and more kind of getting into the Winwood thing. This is more oriented towards what their prog movement is. This has more prog feel to it. And this is really kind of really good with the 3-man crew. Very good band. And number 5. Okay. Now we're going to get into the top 5. Now the top 4 actually, I'm sorry. The top 4 kind of go either way on this, but you're going to see who I end up with, obviously. I mean, most of you who know me know what my top 1 album is going to be. But let's go with number 4. Number 4 is an easy one. A very popular album, probably one of the biggest selling albums in the world. And again, this band is definitely one of the biggest prog bands. Of course, I'm talking about Pink Floyd, and of course the album I'm talking about is Dark Side of the Moon. I could have picked so many other Pink Floyd albums. I was thinking about Metal, I was thinking about Atomic Heart Mother, Saucer Full of Secrets, The Wall, but I went with Dark Side of the Moon because most people are familiar with it to a certain degree, but this really is the pinnacle of their career. This is the album that made their career, and this is also very proggy oriented, lots of uses of different time signatures, different sound pieces like time and money with the cash register, all these different things, lots of instrumentation, lots of experimentation that they had already previewed in some of their early albums really comes to fruition on this album. Just really, really just an amazing album. You're all familiar with it. I mean, the songs from top to bottom, from Speak to Me, Breath in the Air with the keyboard intro, On the Run, really cool, Time, The Great Gig in the Sky with the woman singing in the background, just amazing usage of different harmonics. Side 2 with Money, Us and Them, oh my god, floating away with that drum cymbal, oh my god, with Roger Watt, Nick Mason on drums, Any Color You Like, Brain Damage, and a whole game of Eclipse. The whole album, again, top to bottom, very proggy, very popular, very good, very accessible, and most of the songs people know. Pink Floyd definitely has that feel to it. So it's no secret that this would be in the top 4. Okay. Now the next 3 albums are really your, what I would call the golden age and the massive, known as some of the greatest of prog rock albums of the early 70s. First one is going to be Yes, and of course I went with Fragile. Fragile's really an amazing album. Serious stuff. Fragile is cool because it's one of these albums that I remember it as a kid. I mean, just look at the pieces on this. Roundabout, Cons and Brahms, which of course is a classical adaptation by Wakeman. We have Heaven with the instrumentals by the vocals, harmonics. South Side of the Sky with the Anderson Squire. 5% for Nothing, which is a drum piece by Bill Bruford on side 2. Long Distance Runaround. The Fish, Mood for a Day, and of course Heart of the Sunrise. All these songs, very technical, very heavy, bass-driven with Chris Squire's amazing bass, Bill Bruford's amazing rhythmic pacing of the band. Just really, really cool stuff. This is, if you haven't heard it, you got to go and get this one. This one's just really good. This has got to be on the top. This is really, again, one of the better of the prog rock albums, and this is one of Yes's #1 selling albums besides 90125, which is a completely different band, but can't beat this one. Okay. Coming into number 2, you know I couldn't do it without this one. Of course, you know what album this is. Court of the Crimson King. 1969 release. Greg Lake, Michael Giles, Robert Fripp. This album, what do I need to say? If you're not familiar with this album, just go out and get it. This album is insane. This album is far ahead of its time. You listen to it now, you'd think it was made a couple years ago. The use of the mellotron, use of the synthesizers, the concepting of it, the words, the lyrics by Peter Sinfield. Everything about it from top to bottom is really one of the best structured progressive rock albums out there. Except the next album I'm going to do. And that's because of my personal favorites, because it's my favorite band. But definitely this King Crimson album, 21st Century Schizoid Man, that power chords, the guitars grating on you. Just you can totally get the expediency of that song and what's going on in you. I Talk to the Wind. It goes right to a very beautiful melodic use of the mellotron and woodwinds and Greg Lake's beautiful voice. Then Epitaph, powerful song with this ominous kind of feeling through it. Side 2 with Moonchild, and then of course closing out with the Court of the Crimson King and the Fire Witch and the Dance of the Puppets. Amazing. The lyrics a little psychedelic, a little crazy, but they have this deep meaning to them, and the music just really propels them into the atmosphere. Just an amazing album. I can't say enough about it. One of these albums you just need to sit down and spend some time with. This is not one of these albums you just play in the background and kind of hang out. This is forefront music. So, that's number 2. And of course, what could be number 1? Number 1, first of all, the album cover's right there. But I'm going to show you my other album cover. We're talking Brain Salad Surgery. This is my number 1. Emerson, Lake and Palmer. This is one of the most intricate and tightly knit albums you'll ever hear in progressive rock. A trio, first of all. You're dealing with 3 guys that are doing the music of 10. The songs on this are just ultimately amazing. You cannot, between Jerusalem, Toccata, Ginastera's adaptation, which I opened this show up with. Oh my God, intense sounds and music. First use of electric drums in 1973. Carl Palmer put together his own electric drum and trigger pads. He used them on this album in that piece Toccata. Then there's Benny the Bouncer. Crazy stuff. It has this kind of like barroom kind of song. Very interesting. Then of course there's the Current Evil 9 impressions, 1, 2, and 3. All very well done. Very much large progressive piece, science fiction-y, driven by, of course, the cover here by H.R. Geiger. Amazing art. By the way, Geiger was the same man later, a couple of years later, to design the creature in the movie The Alien, in the 1979 movie directed by Ridley Scott. So same art. You could kind of see kind of some of the elements of Alien in here, especially this creature and everything. But really cool stuff. Oh yeah, and then there was another piece, "Still You Turn Me On," which of course was a Greg Lake song that kind of softened a little bit up, kind of breaks up a little bit of the instrumentation. But Brain Salad Surgery. This is the album, to me, my favorite, and it's really the pinnacle of classical progressive rock. From this album comes out in 1973, so it was right in the middle of it all. So yeah, I would have to say that that's really pretty good stuff. So that's really prog rock. Like, this is like the Prog 101 course, if you want to call it that. So that's kind of the prog that I was talking about. This got you that. There's many other bands. I have so many more I could have gone on, but I just wanted to pick 10 bands. It's got a little primer, kind of 10 top bands. I may do another 10 of unknown bands, like Beggar's Opera, like Gentle Giant, Jade Warrior, all a bunch of different bands, even newer stuff too. Spock's Beard, all different stuff. So, but I'll talk about that later. Those are more kind of discover bands, and this was just kind of a primer to get you in some of these bands you knew, like the Beatles, really big band, and it's to get you going. So, love to know what you have to say. Again, the auctions are going to be going off on Record Hub, so take a peek at that, see if there's anything you guys like on Record Hub. If you haven't, please join Record Hub and join up on my group on YouTube. Give me a like, subscribe. Let me know what's going on. We can talk about this stuff. It'd be really great. And next album I'm going to do some things on the other side of prog. I'm going to start talking about punk rock, which is going to be interesting because punk was supposedly the music movement that kind of destroyed prog rock. But I don't think this destroyed is the right word. I think it's evolution. Things change. People want things that are different. So, all right. Until then, I'm signing off. Take it easy, guys. Stay safe.